You want to know which wide receivers will help you win and could break out for week 10 of fantasy football? Stay tuned to find out. First, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to keep up on the latest of all of our videos to help you win in fantasy football. Here to talk wide receivers and our must starts. Chris, I know you got some good names for me this week.
I sure hope so. I hope I have some good names for all of you out there watching as well. And I'm going to start in Houston with Will Fuller and Brandin Cooks because, to me, they're both great starts this week. Going against Cleveland in what should be a high-scoring game, the Cleveland Browns are the 5th worst against wide receivers, giving up almost 200 yards per game to wide receivers and over a touchdown per game. We've seen since Bill O'Brien has been gone, this offense has been clicking much better. Deshaun Watson has looked much better. Everything's looked better. No shock there. So I like Will Fuller and Brandin Cooks as must starts this week.
Yeah, kind of nice to see Cooks, get it back together after last year. It was so disappointing. There's some real concern with those concussions, but looks like he's good to go. He's becoming a weekly almost must start, kind of still on the border, wide receiver 2 or 3. But I mean, this matchup, you're absolutely right. You can't ignore that. So I'm going to go with a little bit of a homer pick here, DeVante Parker of the Dolphins, mainly because I think he was literally the only wide receiver left in Miami. You might know that Preston Williams is out, suffered an injury last week after catching a touchdown. So they had just traded Isaiah Ford, who probably didn't know much about, but he was actually the number 4 receiver on the Dolphins. So they lost their number 2 guy, the number 4 guy. They had 2 guys opt out before the season. I mean, they're down to DeVante Parker and Jakeem Grant, who's really a kick returner. And he's not supposed to be their main guy, their number 2 guy. So DeVante Parker, just by default, has to get a ton of targets. The Chargers secondary is actually down a man because they traded one of their best quarterbacks in Desmond King to Tennessee. So this isn't a defense really to be scared about. Tua has looked good. So I think Parker definitely should have a high floor this week. And I'm going to start him everywhere I got him.
Yeah, you're right. Tua has looked good. And every Chargers game feels like a shootout. So roll DeVante Parker out. No doubt about it. My next must-start wide receiver, I'm going on the other side of that Cleveland game to Jarvis Landry. And it's easy to look a couple weeks ago before the bye, the first game without Odell Beckham, and say, Landry didn't really do much again. But he got 11 targets in that game, 11 targets, right? It was a sloppy game. The weather was horrible. Neither quarterback, neither passing game really did much in that game. I expect him to have a much better game this week because the Browns are the 5th worst against wide receivers, but right behind them at 6th, the Texans. So, again, I expect this game to be high scoring, a lot of passing in this game. Baker Mayfield looks like he's ready to go from COVID. Shouldn't be an issue. Start Jarvis Landry up with confidence wherever you've got him.
Yeah, and we think Landry will get a lot of targets going forward without Odell Beckham. They also don't have a lot of depth at wide receiver. So Landry, you could see what he's done so far has been okay, but it should just go up from here, honestly. So I'm going to go to Carolina here. Bad news, of course, Christian McCaffrey not playing. Good news for fantasy, they're going to pass the ball more because they have to. But you know what? Not DJ Moore, not Robbie Anderson. I'm going with Curtis Samuel because Tampa Bay, say what you will about last week, that matchup, it should have gone much differently. They just got shredded by New Orleans. I'm just going to throw that game out the window. They have 2 really good outside corners in Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis. Curtis Samuel's not going to get either of them. He's going to work the slot. He's going to get touches in the backfield. Again, no McCaffrey. I think more touches for Samuel. He's becoming more of a weapon in this offense. You saw career high 105 yards last week. And you know what? I think he's going to be the most productive receiver on that team again this week. So you can fade more a little bit. Anderson's startable, but he's not going to have his best game. I really think Samuel is a guy that starts in fantasy this week.
Yeah, and he also, when McCaffrey, well, even last week we saw him get a couple carries out of the backfield, but especially the last few games without Christian McCaffrey, he got quite a bit of work in the backfield, right? It wasn't just all Mike Davis. So he's going to get work in the passing game and out of the backfield. Definitely like Curtis Samuel a lot this week. And then my last must start, get used to this. This guy might be on my list every week from here on out, and that's Tyler Boyd, because the Bengals have one of the best remaining schedules for wide receivers. He's the clear number 1 target for Joe Burrow. He gets those short to intermediate passes, which are the high catch passes, right? Not the deep looks that T. Higgins and AJ Green get. And he's going against Pittsburgh this week, and it's easy to look at Pittsburgh and think, oh, a tough defense. But they're kind of the opposite of Seattle, where they're very good against the run, not very good against the pass. They give up 180 yards through the air to wide receivers, over a touchdown per game to wide receivers. I like Tyler Boyd as a wide receiver 1, a top 12 option this week. Must start Tyler Boyd in your lineup.
Yeah, and then the Pittsburgh defense is one. You should be worried about Joe Mixon coming off injury if he even plays, because they shut down the run. You shouldn't be as worried about them against the pass. They've given up some big games. And like you said, I mean, the Bengals just throw the ball so much. Boyd is the top target. You don't think twice. You got to start him. And then I'm going to go with somebody who didn't do anything last week because he didn't play, but not because he is injured. Brandin Aiyuk could have had a monster game. Who knows? But because of COVID protocol, did not play. He should be back. And Kendrick Bourne is not back because of COVID protocol. And so he's a top target going against the Saints. Again, let's forget last week. That Saints defense is vulnerable to the pass. Aiyuk should get a ton of targets. I really like him. I have him top 20 as far as receivers this week. He's pretty much a must start, both PPR and standard formats. He should get a ton of work, even if it's from Nick Mullins. It doesn't matter, right? This offense is creative enough that they'll find ways to get their playmakers the ball.
Yeah, and Deebo Samuel not a lock to play this week. He may be out one more week, which elevates Brandin Aiyuk even more. No doubt about it.
There you go. Now we've told you the guys we love. Here are the guys, not so much. We're fading them if at all possible. Avoid, must sit for week 10. Who's your first receiver?
My first is Marvin Jones in Detroit. It's easy every time Kenny Golladay is out just to look, oh, Marvin Jones, got to start Marvin Jones. But it's not always the case. Tough matchup this week against my football team. That defense is really good. As long as they're not playing the Giants, that defense is really good. Second toughest against wide receivers. Only giving up 130 yards per game to receivers. Not even half a touchdown per game. I still don't like Marvin Jones in this matchup. I don't like the Detroit offense at all in this matchup, to be honest. So I'm staying away.
Yeah, no, Marvin Jones, reached the end zone. It's not like he had a monster game last week. That was against Minnesota, one of the worst pass defenses around. This is against one of the toughest. And again, he hasn't been putting up monster numbers with Golladay out. So it's not like you can expect that just because he's there and Golladay isn't, that he's a fantasy asset. The matchup says no. I'm also saying no to a guy that I don't know if we feel like he needs to be started every week. He's pretty much matchup dependent, and that's Marquise Brown. Talented guy. I don't know. Maybe it's just because they don't pass the ball enough. And so we thought, okay, let's see. The test was last week because sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease. He was barking out loud, tweeting, I should say, about not getting the ball. And yeah, he still didn't get the ball last week. 3 catches. He's not going to be heavily targeted because Baltimore doesn't do that. Okay. So in this matchup against the Patriots, say what you will about them, their secondary is still pretty good. If Gilmore's healthy, there's just not a lot of room. Even JC Jackson has been really good this year, maybe actually performed better than Gilmore. So just don't expect much from Brown. There's plenty of receivers who you should probably like a little bit better. So on this particular matchup, I'm out on Brown.
Yeah, I've been out on Brown all year. The thing is, the Ravens in neutral games, so in one score or closer games, they're throwing at 39%, which is by far the lowest in the league. And it's really hurt Marquise Brown, and it will continue to do so. And then my next must sit, this is tough for me because I really like him, but it's Justin Jefferson against Chicago. Yeah, the matchup is tough for sure. The Bears, one of the toughest teams against wide receivers. But also, this team wants to run the ball, right? We see they just want to pound the ball with Dalvin Cook, and Chicago's offense isn't good enough to force Minnesota out of their game plan. They're going to want to run the ball. Even if it's not that effective, they're going to want to continue to run the ball. And in a bad matchup, I just don't think Justin Jefferson is going to get enough targets to make him star worthy. Now, sure, he could catch like a 40, 50-yard touchdown and make me look bad. But outside of that, I don't see him doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows what Dalvin Cook's been doing. It's going to be the Cook show as long as he's healthy. Jefferson, I mean, love the player, but like you said, in a negative matchup like this, I just don't think you can trust him quite enough. I mean, hopefully you have a better option. And then my last must sit for wide receiver is going to be a guy I kind of hinted at earlier. One of those boom bust players. It's been a lot of busts lately. Darius Slayton, even with Golden Tate not traveling, that whole saga is continuing. He still didn't do much. And you know what? Playing the Eagles, the last time they played the Eagles, Slayton did nothing. It was 2 catches for 23 yards. Sure, he could rip off a big play at any time, but those types of players, more often than not, don't. So the weeks you start them, they disappoint you. And then, of course, the week you bench them, they'll come up with a long touchdown. But it's just, I mean, this Giants offense is playing more conservative. They're being a little bit more efficient, but it's not helping Slayton. It was a lot better last year when Daniel Jones was just letting it rip and they were throwing it, 40 plus times a game. They're not doing that this year, which is probably smarter, but it's not good for fantasy.
Yeah, and Shepard has really hurt him. In the 3 games Shepard has played since his injury, 8 targets, 10 targets, and 8 targets. So he's scooping up a lot of targets. And Evan Ingram is starting to get more targets down the stretch here. We may talk about him in the tight end episode. So, yeah, not looking good for Slayton.
No, not good for Slayton. Check out that tight end episode, by the way. We talk about tight ends, quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs each and every week to help you make good decisions. And of course, Endgame Live every Sunday morning, 2 hours before kickoff. We answer all of your questions, anything you got, and we provide you with the latest updates. So check us out. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And thanks for watching.